Hello, 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 hello. Oh, there you are. Hello. It's Susan back again from Everyone Can Craft. I'm up to all sorts of mischief. See, I've got something different in my hair there. Usually I wear my black headband, but I found this one today and it makes a bit of a change, doesn't it? I'm not quite sure what Mum thought was thinking about when she gave me it, but it wouldn't be my first choice, but it doesn't look too bad on the YouTube on the video, does it? Anyway, enough of that, Gus. Enough of that there. Yep. I've titled this Setting Up Creative Haven. And if you caught the video I made yesterday, you'll see that I had tried yesterday to get a craft, to resurrect an old craft group called Safe Haven. And I had odds and tried doing that bit by bit, odd times, and then tried a bit and had I'd had problems with the finding a room and all sorts of things and trying to work out how I was going to do it. And then when I actually found a room for setting up a craft group, I got into the room and I thought, this is not a good room for Safe Haven. It's much smaller than the room we had. It was about probably a third of the size of the room that we used to use. There wasn't as much room to get the wheelchairs around the table. I hadn't looked at the room, actually gone into the room itself when I was doing that. So that was partly my fault on there. It really wasn't the best of rooms. And then when I got close up to the tables, I thought, these tables are okay for people who have got good legs. But try to put a wheelchair around those tables and you've got all sorts of problems. I don't know whether you've ever thought of this, but tables have legs, right? That's pretty obvious, isn't it? Well, what the problem with table legs, especially when you've got people with wheelchairs, is that you've got to find room between the legs to put the feet. Now, when you're sitting in an ordinary chair, you can adjust that round a bit easier, but it's a bit more challenging with a wheelchair. So what I did once I went in there, I pulled all the chairs back to the wall so that if anybody did come in a wheelchair, they'd be able to judge where there was no metal underneath, because these tables were like single leg tables, and they had feet. Now the feet wouldn't be much of a problem for the majority of people, but for somebody in a wheelchair, those chairs, oh, excuse me, those chairs would be challenging. You see, you've got to fit the gap between the table legs, and then you've got the foot on the floor, which is about half an inch up off the floor, because of course you can't just have a single solid leg without a foot in the end to keep the table steady. And they've got these feet on the sort of like the feet underneath these monopods, and they really weren't suitable for people with wheelchairs on there. So I'd move the tables back. Actually, I'd move them back so they look quite tidily the way I'd moved them back, Grant, to be honest. And then it made it so that people could pull the chairs up as to where they wanted them. So I was there, but then, of course, as I said last night, nobody turned up. And I finally admitted that Safe Haven is dead, and it was a case of long live Creative Haven. Creative Haven? What on earth is that? Well, that was what I was thinking. That's what I've been thinking about more recently. See, the thing is with crafts is that they can be used in a variety of ways. They can be used because they are so beneficial for our well-being in a variety of ways. Organizations that promote well-being often have a craft group. So you'll find the mental health charity has a craft group. You'll find that maybe the local hospice has a craft group where you've got where somebody who is sick unto death is spending quality time with somebody from their family as part of the craft group. On there, it all sorts of ways and means of using crafts. So people do this, get use crafts for a variety of reasons. Well, I've been sort of working along those lines and trying to think ideas like that through, and all sorts of ideas. And then I'd even there had a look. Somebody did. I had found a short course on new monasticism. What the blazes has new monasticism got to do with a craft group? Well, actually, often the way they do outreach from I know from a group that sort of fits into the new monastic category is something that would really fit the idea of a craft group. And that's why I'd done that. It did make sense. I promise you, it made sense. It might not look it on the surface, but it made sense. So I'd got all this sorted on there, and it was a case of there, and I'd done that course, and then I got some of the books on there, and one of the books that the course tutor had recommended was something was a 12-step program. Now I've seen 12-step programs for overeaters, for Debtors Anonymous. I've seen them adapted for there was a mental health organization I came across many years ago that had adapted a form of 12-step program on there, and it's a very popular thing. In fact, the strange thing about the 12-step programs, especially as they were done from the Alcoholics Anonymous, is that the Christians like them, but then they think they're not Christian enough. The reason why 12-step programs are not Christian enough is because when they were originally developed in the 1930s, they was developed as with a very strong Christian bias, using Christian principles on there. Wasn't necessarily, throwing God in your face all the time on there, but it was obviously very there, and they found that even in 1930s America, those who had been having problems with alcohol in those there were not very keen on going to a very overt Christian program. And when they toned down the Christian bit, they started to get people there, and it was they had to find this balance of using enough of the ideas from the Christian faith to help people, but not so much as it turned people away. So you now find that 12-step programs often turn Christians away because that looks sort of Christian, but it's not really, because it's been modified, and the reason why it's modified is to make people want to join in. You can't win sometimes. You really can't win. And that's, in a sense, is where a lot of things on this borderline of faith and faith in action, founder, because you can dumb things down or quieten the faith side down a bit, and then leave it so quiet that it doesn't actually serve its purpose. Because you've actually dumbed it down so much, it can actually make it so that it's harder. That's one of the That's one of the complaints that people have made about seeker sensitive churches, in the sense that they have dumbed down the ideas so much that people have not been able to. It's kept people not on, well, not even on milk, almost on water, not hardly even strong milk. Never mind there, and because they've kept people on this watered down milk for so many years, in the long term it's caused problems. So it's an interesting thought, this sort of mix and it's sort of this border country between doing things on a faith-based basis and doing things that are not of that sort of crossover bit, where it's a sort of bit bit like a hybrid. Well, you've got this from the faith side, and you've got this side from this bit from the practical, and put it together and make a hodgepodge. It's very tricky to get that right. Well, which is one of the problems I've got with the Creative Haven. You see, I'd seen this 12-step program that I wanted to work out on there, and I was trying to work out how I could do this 12-step program of lead. It was based on the idea of selfishness, and the 12-step program is basically initial stages of a discipleship program, really, because if a discipleship program is looking at your life and saying, well, I could have done this better, now this is how I'm going to start, and that's the base, that's the early stages, and that's what a 12-step program is really good at. A discipleship program, though, takes it on a bit further. It doesn't just sort of look at what people have done wrong and sort of make amends and deal with the forgiveness side of things on there. The discipleship program sort of builds on the idea that when somebody has gone through the forgiveness and repentance and renunciation processes and all that sort of like initial stages, the sort of getting things right in the early days, there's another stage which is not after the cleanup, and that is starting to see things in the way that God does. In fact, to be honest, it sounds absolutely crazy, but that is one of the things that some of us have an objection with the Church of England. We sometimes we look at what they do and what they say, and we look and think, are you absolutely sure that that's in line with what the Bible says? Are you absolutely sure about this? And they get pulled apart, so they get criticized a lot for their lack of a biblical approach, which sounds crazy for a church, but it's sort of the world's gone that far mad on there. So it's an interesting there. So if my ultimate dream is to get there, that sort of, like I said, I've said elsewhere that when I was praying around the local community centre, the one that's just around the corner from me, so 5-10 minutes walk away, I was saying, I was praying around there thinking, well, what's am I going to do in the future? What's going to happen to this building in the future? And I was praying around, and I came up with not so much I came up with the idea dropped into my head. from outside somewhere, presumably God. It felt like God to me anyway. And I got the idea of doing a crafting church, and it was a case of, okay, how do you do a crafting church? Well, you start off with a church that helps people to sort of deal with their current issues, especially the mental health issues, and make them feel good and give them a sense of peace. And then you can build that up to a church once you've drawn people in like that. Well, that's the sort of thing that I'm thinking of with this Creative Haven. The idea is to draw people in on there and get them to linger in there and do what some people have called presence therapy. You see, as you probably saw in last night's video, I have an interesting way of actually seeing things on there. There was what you might call an evangelistic call on that, but it wasn't sort of come here and be saved on there. That's not my style at all. It was, yeah, well, you know, God helps you, and you there, and you can be, and if you're part of the family, you'll get helped even more, and you'll be so much better off. And that's my approach with all of this. It's not oh, if you don't behave yourselves and don't get your act together, you're ending hell. I'm thinking, ooh, I don't like that at all. That quite basically, I like the idea of encouraging people to become part of God's family. Now, that is a biblical concept. There's something that's that's something that sort of fits in quite nicely with what you read in the New Testament. I like the idea. Yeah, let's all become part of God's family, and let's work together as a family and do things together as a family. That's my understanding. It's not your usual, oh, you must be saved to and there. No, it's a sort of coming together and doing things together and helping each other become more like God wants us to be, and becoming part of his family, and becoming in there, and sort of the idea is very, very often we forget that the New Testament teaches of a number of different judgments. We very often think of the first judgment. Well, the first judgment is actually, well, are you in God's family, or are you not? Are you one of God's children, or are you not? Are you a Christian, or are you not? Have you really got this relationship with God right? And that's the first level. Well, of course, somebody involved with the church, you would expect them to pass that test pretty easily. Whether they will or not, it's another matter, but you would expect them to pass that test quite easily. But the next step is primarily for the Christian who's sort of saying, well, look, I've got to will I be told, am I a good and faithful servant? Have I worked out what I should have done? And if once I've worked out what I should have done while I've been alive here on earth, have I actually done it? That's an interesting thought, isn't it? And part of the reason why we don't necessarily do things is something that God's been showing me recently, in the sense that we need to get our act together so that we are a bit like that, so like dealing with the forgiveness and dealing with the hurts and the bumps and the bangs that are stopping us and making us see things in the wrong way. sort of, because once something's gone wrong there, so if somebody's hurt us, it's very easy not to see that situation in the same way afterwards. I mean, once somebody's gone bang, you know, slapped us across the face or whatever, as the old proverbs say, we are once bitten, twice shy. We'll not put ourselves in that position again, and that'll change our behavior. And once that's changed our behavior, we can get ourselves into a tiswas and a downward spiral and down in a downward spiral. So we then have to be able to pick ourselves up from that. So we've got on there, but that's where the idea of forgiveness and repentance and sort of accepting, say, well, God, I've fallen short. I've not quite done things as I should have done. Help! Help us sort this mess out. And of course, like a good father, say, oh, now you know what you've done wrong. Right, okay. Now you recognize what you've done. Let's work together and we'll sort it, and we'll do our best to sort this not out. But you've got to do it we've got to do it together. You've got to do it my way and sort things out on there and follow my instructions, and it'll all work and things will come to the best conclusion that's possible in the circumstances. Because there's sometimes when we do things wrong where there's consequences that can't be undone. When you think of the times when we have when we have started a life that weren't supposed to start, or ended a life that we weren't supposed to end, or there's some things that can't be undone on there, but God in his mercy is able to bring out the best end result for us. It's just that he's a bit limited once we've made a thorough mess of things at times on there. So we've got this there. So we've got, so that's the sort of thing how this creative haven was supposed to work. It's supposed to work by drawing people and getting them involved in crafts, helping them learn the sort of skills of forgiveness and turning them round towards godly ideas, then bring them into faith in the family, and then helping them to learn the Bible well enough so that they can see things there, so that what they read in the Bible actually changes their minds, and they see, oh, well, really, I shouldn't have done this, should I? I mean, there's a few crazy stories in the Bible. That's some things I don't think you would find very often. Certainly not amongst people who wander into a community room in the local supermarket. I mean, you don't normally get somebody that's banged a great big tent peg into somebody's skull hanging around in the local supermarket. I'm not saying it's not possible. I mean, I remember being in church one day, and and some of the members of the church had an almighty shock. We were discussing the idea of the Ten Commandments. We're going through a series on the Ten Commandments, and we just got to the stage about thou shalt not murder, when a little old lady said, well, I think I know something about this issue. And we looked, and the majority of people in the church, even people who had known her for 40, 50 years, looked at her and said, and thought, what on earth is she on about? And then she said that decades earlier, she'd had a daughter who was murdered, and even people who had known her for 40 years on there. In fact, the pastor was so surprised, he turned around to her daughter and said, who he knew, who was sort of there in the church beside her, said, "Is this true?" And she said yes. And that lady had been a good friend of the pastor's wife for 40 years or more. Hmm. And nobody, and it was that family's big secret. So sometimes strange things do happen. I mean, I've seen you wouldn't have expected murder to be something that touched the church very often, but one church I went to in its history, the Sunday school superintendent had been murdered when he was who was a bank clerk, and one of the customers had got crazily upset and stabbed him. We had somebody else concerned about their brother's relative, the brother's grandchildren, because their brother's daughter had been killed by the father of the boys. I mean, that was again a long time ago. A good chance that the father would be out of jail by now, and you're thinking, well, how on earth do you ever resolve that kind of tangle on there? Because how do you resolve that one? And there's things that we do that are hard to resolve and that we can't resolve fully without the help of other people. Remember talking to a guy who had a mental health breakdown, nasty one actually, and found himself in hospital. When he came, and once he'd sort of recovered and was pretty much in his right mind again, he said, how do I cope with my brother and sister because they won't speak to me? And saying, well, what do you mean they won't speak to you? Well, I said so many terrible things to them while I wasn't thinking straight, and now they won't speak to me because they don't trust me anymore. And I'm thinking, and the only thing I could come up with was that in that situation, which must have been a God-given wisdom, I promise you, it wasn't mine, was that to forgive the brother and sister. I couldn't think. There was nothing. What else do you say in that kind of situation? So it's that kind of issue on there, that sort of forgiveness that brings people peace and helps people see things the way God does. And once they start seeing things the way God does, they start seeing that God is so amazing, and they can use them and work with them and through them and become their part and become a partner, and they can do some pretty amazing things because they are working with and in partnership with God, and He's able to help them do crazily amazing things on there. And that's the sort of thing that, so God's been working all those ideas through me and saying, well, look, this is what the church should be like on there. And when I first started this idea of, well, how do you start a crafting church, God? How do you do that? And he says, well, you start a craft group for people with mental health needs or who are hurting, and then you see where I take it. Okay, so I've been at that. Been sort of, as I've been listening to things and talking to people, and God's been directing, watch this video or read that book or go this place and pick up all sorts of ideas and talk to some of my friends online. Actually, I've got a lovely group of friends online I meet on a Tuesday afternoon, gorgeous folk, and we are very, very much iron sharpening iron, and we are helping each other. And one of the things that we are saying that we've said recently is the way that it's actually God coming, it's Jesus coming out of us. It's not that we go around and go boing, 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 and upset people. And it's just that there is so much of God's love, God's peace, joy, righteousness, whatever you want to call it, so much of God in us that it sort of overflows out of us. And as it flows out of us, it flows on to other people and it impacts other people. And some people call that a presence therapy. And that's what that's one of the things that I'm going to, as I've put on the poster for this new craft group, this Creative Haven, saying that it's done by mixing. It sort of says, I'll read you what I put on the poster. Have you come out shopping to get away from it all? Would you like to linger a bit in a creative haven? We mix crafts and presence therapy. And our aim is to help you find that missing piece in your life. And peace is P-E-A-C-E. It's double meaning there. We often think of a missing piece as in P-I-E-C-E. Well, I've written it as P as in a piece of cake, but I've put it here as in P-E-A-C-E, like peace and peace, joy, happiness, that kind of peace. There's different spellings for different things. And I've said that it's going to be not next Wednesday, the Wednesday after, when it's going to be, where it's going to be. And then I put a note at the bottom. You could bring your knitting or you could join in with what I'm doing. And what I plan to do is do some of those things that I've got with those A6 cards. And I've got all sorts of ideas and thoughts about doing cards and pictures and doing a set of postcards that will remind people what they're doing. And because I started a journey using A6 cards with A6 paper and A6 greeting cards with the C6 envelopes, because the C6 envelopes fit the A6 cards, if you see what I mean. And because I've got the cards and the end blank greeting cards and the paper and the card and the things that will actually and the things that you can draw around, sort of some stencils and some things that you draw around, like the pieces of plywood, and some things that you draw around, such as plastic stencils. Because I've got so many of those, I'm going to see what I can do with that and see if I can do things that actually connect people to get them to help realize and help them get started on this journey of forgiveness and of connecting with the past and the things that have hurt them, and help them there. And I found that in my own life, as there's been times when I have been anything but peaceful. I've had 2 or 3 stages in my periods of my life when I've been anything but peaceful. And one of the best ways I've discovered of getting back to a peaceful state is to understand what's gone wrong and start forgiving people and start giving up the pain, saying, well, look, oh yes, I'm there, and by that bringing the peace. So that is what I've got planned, and I'm going to see what happens. It's going to be a journey. There is no way that I could follow that journey by myself. Thank you very much. I can go so far with something like that, but there is no way whatsoever I can do that all by myself. It's got to be a partnership with the great and mighty God, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't. I'm not good at it's too crazy an idea. I can work it in partnership with God. Yeah, that's no problem. By myself, no. And yeah, so we work together as good friends, good partners, father and daughter, and do things together. And so that's enough of my ramble for today. Hopefully, you'll be able to get some good stuff out of this and see where I'm going. So I'll catch up with you tomorrow and see where we go from here. It's an interesting journey, this, isn't it? Right, bye.